Welcome. In this video, we're going to go over 5 sample questions and see how we can answer the questions using Caseware IDEA. So to start with the first question, Roger Company has a policy that their allowance for uncollectible accounts should be 50% of the amount in the 61 to 90 days past due category, plus 75% of the amount in the greater than 90-day past due category as of the reporting day, in this case, December 31st, 2015. In addition to recomputing the allowance for uncollectible accounts, report the results of the accounts receivable aging in a table. So obviously, to calculate the allowance for doubtful accounts, I need to age the receivables. So let me get into IDEA. Everything I need to do in IDEA, I can find the information in the ribbon on top, in the File Explorer on the left-hand side, or the properties on the right-hand side. So let me start by clicking on the File Explorer. I've already imported all my files and they've come in as databases. So I'm going to look at the accounts receivable database, which has 402 records. So I shall select that. Once I select that, in the categorize, I go to aging. And here in aging, I have to do the aging by date. I was asked to do it as of December 31st, 2015. So I pick one day after that. So it's going to be January 1st, 2016. And note how the date is structured over here. It is the year, the month, followed by the day. The aging field is the due date. I want the amount, and I want it in 3 categories: under 30 days, 31 to 60, and 61 to 90. Anything past 90 is overdue. So I change these last three settings to 0. So by default, IDEA gives me 6 intervals. And then it's asking me what the database name should be that I create. So it's going to be a sub-database or a child database. So I'm using the word aging, and it says aging 1 over here, and that's fine. And I'm going to click on the OK button. So as soon as I click on this button, it has done the aging of the receivables for me. The 402 receivables, it said that in the interval 0 to 30 days, there are 207 records. 31 to 60 days, 93 records. 61 to 90, I have 32. And over 90, I have 70 records. It gives me the percentage of the 402 records in each category. What I'm concerned with is the dollar amounts, these amounts that I have over here. So I'm going to take this information and I take the second and third category, and those are the ones I'm going to use to calculate my allowance for doubtful account. Now this information can be exported as an Excel file. You can cut and paste this into a Word file as you may choose to set up the aging of the accounts receivable table. The options to do so are over here in terms of how you take the information out. You can also show this as a graph. If you click on the first setting over here, this information is going to change into a graph. And you see a histogram telling you how the receivables are stacked over here. So we have dealt with the first one over here. I'm going back to my accounts receivable database here. I shall close this. Okay. Now let's look at the second one. In the second question, they're saying, assuming no cash is collected on past due accounts, how much how much will be more than 60 days past due as of January 31st, 2016? Okay, so I go back to the file, to the IDEA file. I select accounts receivable, and I could go in over here and look at history, and that's what I wanted to look for. I wanted to look for aging of receivables. Okay, so all the results are over here. So I go back to aging of receivables. Now, if I want to rerun this program over here, rerun the analysis, I could go back to aging and redo it all over again, or I can simply click on the rerun button. When I click on the rerun button, it tells me how I came up with this subset over here, this database over here. So this was as of January 1st, 2016. The question asked me now January 31st, 2016. So again, what do we do for the date? We change the date to January 31st, but we add one, so it becomes Feb 1st. Okay. Also, I'm interested in everything that's over 60 days. So this category, I change it to 0. And it has changed the name of the file to aging11. And that's fine. I click on OK. And now what you will see is it has all the files, all the records that are up to 60 days old, and the ones that are more than 60. So now the number has changed to 213, and the question is specifically asking for this dollar amount. How much is going to be over 60 days old? And the answer is going to be 267,120.64. Let's move on to the third question. Auditors must gather evidence and obtain documentation about identified risks. A risk in the purchasing process is that a purchase is made from an unauthorized vendor. Gather information about possible unauthorized vendors using the join feature. How many records are there in the joint database? So let's go back over here. I'm going to close out the accounts receivable database. I'm going to accounts payable, select this, and I'm also going to open the vendor database, and I'll explain what I'm going to do over here. So I now have two databases. This one has just the names of the vendors, the name of the vendor, their address, the vendor number, last day they have been reviewed, the vendors have been reviewed. The accounts payable has information obviously just from the invoice. So what is common is a vendor number, and that's the one I want to join it by. So just a thing to remember, the vendor number when you're joining by a field, both those fields have to be the same type in both databases. So if I bring my cursor up here, it says that my vendor database is numeric. Go to the vendor file and the vendor number is numeric, so I'm good to join. So start with this one and I select join. So the accounts payable has 102 records. I'm going to select the secondary file as the vendors. Okay. It asks for the name of the file. It just calls join database by default. You can change the name. And then we're going to look at the match. How do we want it matched? So the matching we want is based on vendor number in the ascending order, and again, vendor number in the ascending order. And now you'll see the letter N in parentheses. It's saying that they're both numeric, and we are good with that. If one was numeric, the other was character, otherwise, we need to change it. We need to modify it in the database before we can do the join. So we're good to go over here. And then it says, how do you want to do the match? So I'm going to say, I want all records in both files and select OK. And now what you see is we have 103 records. Okay, so it is joined by vendor number. So the vendor number 10104500 has been matched with 10104500. So it's listed all the vendors that were there in the AP, the accounts payable database, and all the vendors listed in the vendor database. Okay, so the answer is 103 for the third question. Now, in question 4, we've been asked, from the joint database, identify how many transactions were made in the accounts payable database using unauthorized vendors. Okay, so once again, if you go back over here, recall your accounts payable had a total of 102 transactions or 102 invoices. The vendors you have are 48. And the join we have 103. So we need to investigate. So if you just look down any list, okay, any of these columns, what you will see is there are some blanks over here. So there was something in the accounts payable database that was not over here. So an easy way to do this is go to a numeric field. So I'll go over here to vendor number, right click over here, and select this, display all records containing 0. So it's giving me this pop-up window and it's saying you want vendor number, and that's a new column that we have over here. The operating field is that's equal to 0, and I say okay. And the answer is I have 4 vendors. Okay, I have 2 vendors. There are 4 transactions. There are 2 unauthorized vendors, which means we have purchased from someone who was not on our approved list. And as you can see, the last review, there is no date. Last activity, there is no date. There's something amiss over here. Okay, let's go to question number 5. One aspect of gathering evidence is obtaining copies of invoice. How many gaps are there within the invoice numbers in the accounts receivable database? Which invoice does it identify? Okay, let's go back over here. I will close these databases. I'm back to accounts receivable. And so what we've been asked to look at over here is the invoice number. You can see we have 402 records, which means there are 402 invoices. The invoices should be numbered sequentially. So if you look at this, we have 83, 20, 99, 83, 20, 83, 21, 21, 00, and so forth. What they're asking you to look is there a number that is missing in this sequence? Now you could do it in Excel, writing up formulas, but there's a much easier way of doing it over here. In the Analysis tab, we go to Explore. In Explore, you go to Gap Detection. And what do I want to where do I want to detect the gaps? An invoice number. So I will select invoice number, and I don't need to do anything else over here. The result name, it says gap detection 2, and that's fine. We select OK, and we find that there are 2 over here. Okay, so these numbers are missing. They are the missing items that have been detected. So obviously, something happened with these 2 being missing, and we need to investigate it. So as you can see, we've answered all 5 questions with relative ease. The key over here is documenting our answers and how we arrived at those answers. That you will see in the next video.